almost heaven. West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is all there, older than the trees.
Attention citizens, nuclear strike imminent. Please exit the area at your earliest convenience. Thank you for your cooperation.
Wow.
That's an intro.
Is an intro. That is an intro. So welcome along to our new monthly feature. This is Monsters of Fallout 76. And each episode, we are going to be talking about a different monster that's in the computer game, Fallout 76, which is based on creatures that we've talked about before, or that we haven't talked about before as well. And this first episode revolves around Mothman. So Mothman is a character in the Fallout 76 game. And we're going to talk about this each episode and a different monster that's in this game.
Yeah, exactly. So Fallout 76 particularly is one of my all-time favourite games. It got quite a lot of stick when it came out, and it still does, but fuck the haters.
I haven't even played it. I've seen it, but I've never played it.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And like Greg said, it's based in West Virginia, in the Appalachia, where we know there's lots of famous sort of paranormal cases, like the Mothman we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Huge episodes going to be talking about the Grafton Monster, a case that was featured in Project Blue Book as well, the Flatwoods Monster, all sort of real cases from around West Virginia and the surrounding states in Appalachia. And these are monsters that are featured in Fallout 76 as enemies, sometimes as friends, but they all feature. And again, it's quite cool to sort of talk about the monster and how it's portrayed in the game, and then then look at the actual story behind each of these. I thought that would be a pretty cool thing to do.
Definitely.
So we actually talked about Mothman in our second ever episode.
Was it second? It was the second ever episode. I remember it was an early one. Wow.
So it's time to revisit.
Definitely. Overdue, in fact. That's over 2 years ago.
Wow.
Mental.
There are aliens in the Fallout games. In all the games, there's been like some sort of alien or UFO feature. That's cool. That's why I like it as well, because UFOs and aliens. But they're not based on anything like actual events. It's just like more in general. So we won't talk about them in this series, but we will be talking about the other monsters. So let's crack on. The first episode is Mothman.
Super.
So in the game, there are a number of different versions of the Mothman. They all have different names that you can come across.
Okay.
There's the wise Mothman, which is a friendly Mothman, and he imparts his wisdom into your character, giving you like a character like a bit of buff, a bit of intelligence, some more benefits in game. And you have to summon him by, this is interesting as well, by lighting up the landlocked lighthouse based on the real Somerville Lake Lighthouse.
Oh, wow.
Which is a landlocked lighthouse, so it's nowhere near water. But it's a lighthouse.
That's weird.
So in the game, it's literally like on the side of the mountain. It's like, it's similar to how it is in real life. So based on the real Somerville Lake Lighthouse, which was built kind of a bit of a result of a joke, where there was this couple and he had a friend that was building wind turbines, and he said like, "Oh, sends a wind turbine." In the end, he did. Ended up sort of using the base of a wind turbine and built it into a lighthouse, basically. And it sort of came like a bit of a community project where people sort of chipped in, supplied things. Local light fitters came and put the light in, so it's got rotating like a lighthouse does. So it's like a real working lighthouse, but
nowhere near the water.
Nowhere near the water. It's like a bit of like a tourist attraction.
So we've got a thing like that in Oxford. The Shark. I don't know if you've seen that. So there's a house in the centre of Oxford, and you can Google it. And there is a shark in the top of a house, like pointing down, so its head's in
Oh,
the top of the house.
yeah, I have seen that.
Yeah, so nowhere near anywhere where a shark would be, and it's randomly in the roof. But
Yeah, so you have to light up this light on this lighthouse, and that summons this wise Mothman that you then
okay,
interact with, and it gives you his sort of wisdom.
yeah, okay, that's cool. That's cool.
And we've got the stalking Mothman, the
Obviously,
vengeful Mothman, and a glowing Mothman. So obviously, nuclear war is basis of the Fallout games.
yes.
Fallout 76 is set. Oh my god, I'm gonna get this wrong now. I sound like a noob. 25 years after the bombs went off.
Noob.
Still relatively because the other Fallout games are set like hundreds of years after sort of bombs gone off. 76 is like 25, short 25 years after. So everything's still quite fresh and
Yeah.
green, still like sort of new. Whereas in the other games, it's quite like bland. There's no vegetation or anything. It's all been sort of gone. But Fallout 76 is quite well done. So a lot of creatures are like glowing because they're irradiated. Well, the radiation and stuff that gives them like different powers and stuff as well.
So what I'll commit to, Ash, because as we talked about offline, I've not actually played this game at all. I know nothing about Fallout 76. So my commitment is that by the next episode that we do, I'll be playing it.
Cool.
I'll give it a go. Xbox rules.
Good. Most of the variants of the Mothman are quite aggressive. The stalking Mothman kind of just follows you. So it's dead creepy because you just like sort of see these glowing eyes sort of in the distance, or you'll hear the noise and think that there's someone near me. And he just like sort of there just watching you. But if you attack him, he will like defend and attack you back. But he's not
Yeah.
aggressive.
Yeah.
The other one-
I'm just pulling it up as well. So I can see that he's not aggressive, but will defend himself when he's attacked. And it looks bloody creepy, I must say.
He's just kind of like shock waves from his like vibrations to sort of send like a shock wave at you, and that's like how he attacks. And he like zips, and, like teleports almost like from part to part. So he just disappears, you don't know where he is, and he pop up behind you. So why are you trying to good at it? Yeah. And in the game, because obviously most of the places in the game are based on real places, and it's mad because people have obviously gone to West Virginia and took photos of the actual towns, what towns in the games are based on.
Okay. Yeah.
I've seen them in real, and there's a place in the game called Point Pleasant,
Which we'll come on to a bit later. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where sort of that has the Mothman Museum, which is there in real life. The Mothman statue is identical to the one that's in the real Point Pleasant, and so and the people the sort of characters that live in that Point Pleasant are called cultists. And they're like Mothman cultists that obviously all believe in the Mothman.
Yeah.
They have like a shrine to him, and they'll attack anyone that comes into Point Pleasant because they don't want anyone else sort of coming into their space.
How have I not played this game before? I've seen it. I've seen the game, but yeah.
So especially 76 for all the sort of paranormal stories and stuff, it really, really does a good job of, and which we'll find out over the next few months when we talk about each one.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of, it's not really a main character in the game, but it's quite a prominent character that seems to always be there, pops up there and thereabouts. So that's kind of how it's portrayed in the game.
Yeah.
So I guess now we'll talk about the legend, the real stories behind the Mothman.
Yeah, so Mothman is something that I'd heard of a long time ago, because sort of my, like as we've talked about previous, like my journey into paranormal and all that kind of stuff started quite a long time ago, and then I sort of fell out of not interest, but other things life gets in the way, and then I've sort of revisited it. So Mothman was actually a story or a legend or whatever you want to call it that I'd heard of, and culminated in me reading the book, The Mothman Prophecies,
Yeah.
which is a great book, actually. I really enjoyed reading that.
John
And
King.
then I watched the film, which was of the same name and starred Richard Gere in 2002. Not so great. The book was definitely better than the film, but it was all good. It's all good. So, as you said, the Mothman, it comes from Point Pleasant in West Virginia, and it's like a folklore of this humanoid creature. It's got wings. It's got glowing red eyes, and glowing red eyes seem to be the sort of the main sort of calling card, as it were, of the Mothman. And basically, there was some grave diggers that reported a sighting when they were digging some graves in November '66. They thought they spotted something. They glanced up, something that was sort of flying overhead, and it appeared to be a massive figure that was moving rapidly from tree to tree. And the gravediggers later described it as like a brown human being, so real dark. And they were the first sort of major sort of sighting of it. It would become known as a Mothman because it looked like a winged human. But it was always something that remained elusive. There was never really any sort of, there's no video of it, there's no cameras. And back in the 60s, people didn't carry around cameras. And it only sort of, it was only for a sort of certain time. It was like over the course of about a year or so, between 66 and 67, that the Mothman really sort of, the sightings intensified. And it was all around Point Pleasant. After these guys had their initial report, there was two couples that noticed a white winged creature, which was about 6 or 7 feet tall, standing in front of the car that they're all sitting in. Bit freaky, but they again said that the beast had like red eyes, about 6 inches apart. It had a huge wingspan of about 10 feet, and the apparent urge to avoid the bright headlights of the car, which is where this sort of dark figure comes from, because nobody had really seen it with any kind of lighting on it. So, according to other witnesses, the creature was able to fly at incredible speeds. Some say up to about 100 miles an hour, and all of them agreed that the beast was quite clumsy when it was running on the ground. So it was always sort of seen up in the air and was a bit clunky walking around. And if you see sort of some of the pictures and the size of this thing walking around with huge wings on its back, it's going to be quite top heavy, I would imagine.
Yes, I saw one description of it. It's like a slender, muscular man, about 7 feet tall, with like large white wings. Just imagine just seeing that just in front of you. You'd absolutely piss your pants on you.
Oh, it would. And the statue, if you see the statue, and you can Google the statue, because like you say, in Point Pleasant, there is actually, they've sort of embraced Mothman. And it looks horrific. If that's what people are seeing, it's horrible thing. But more and more sightings were reported in the Point Pleasant area over the sort of the year between 66 and 67. And that's when this legend took a bit more shape. They reckon there was 8 additional sightings in the short space of 3 days after the first claims, including 2 firefighters who said that they saw a very large bird with large red eyes. And if you look at, again, if you Google the picture and Google the image, there's like a classic image of Mothman, this big black winged creature with glowing red eyes. And you could mistake it for like a huge bird, but the thing's like a pterodactyl size thing. It's huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah. And then people having sort of dreams and premonitions of like an impending
Doom. Yeah,
very strange. And also believe some people claim to have had like strange phone calls and visits from the Men in Black
yeah.
and things like that.
Nice.
Another Fallout reference you not played together.
So basically, this became legend very quickly. And locals became convinced that they were seeing the Mothman in birds and other large animals, even long after there was like this prankster that they thought was pulling out the jokes. But it's worth noting that the Mothman legend bears a resemblance to several demon archetypes found among those who've experienced sleep paralysis. And like you mentioned, people have been dreaming about it and having visions. So some people have sort of suggested that Mothman is actually just like a human fear, and this legend's born out of the fact that somebody thinks they've seen something. And as you know, in certain places, we've had cases that we've talked about where people have like a mass hysteria. And I'm not saying this is mass hysteria, but people can almost be talked into seeing something that's not there, and they convince themselves that what they're seeing is Mothman. So they see two red eyes, and it could be a deer or something potentially. I'm not saying that's what it was, but in a dark of night, and you're seeing these red eyes glowing, it could be a wolf, it could be anything, and people are like, shit, there's Mothman. And then they'll go, oh, we saw Mothman last night, and then the next night somebody else has seen it, and then over the course of a short period of time, this legend has developed. So who knows if it's really like properly up there and true. However, there was an issue with the Silver Bridge. So the Silver Bridge was constructed in 1928 and connected Point Pleasant and Cayuga in Ohio. And the name was credited to aluminum, for the American references out there, coloured paint that was used. Now, on the 15th of December 1967, during rush hour, the bridge collapsed. And the bridge resulted in 31 vehicles falling into the river, killing 46 people and injuring 9, which is unusual for a bridge to collapse. But people believe that it was Mothman who caused the disaster. So it's one of those enduring mysteries now, which is there's a sign up that says that the Silver Bridge collapsed. And people are saying that it's basically the only thing that could have happened, because there was this foreboding, was that Mothman had actually caused the bridge collapse, because there was Mothman sightings in the preceding days. So the bridge collapse followed sightings of the Mothman, and it wasn't long before people started to connect both Mothman sightings and the bridge collapse and put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5 potentially. But John Keel, the author of Mothman Prophecies, conflated that the Mothman sightings and the bridge disaster were connected. He also incorporated UFO activity, and his story took hold, and the town soon became iconic amongst many conspiracy theorists, ufologists, and fans of the paranormal. Point Pleasant now is known for the Mothman legend, and decades later it's still like an ongoing and enduring kind of sort of homage to what happened back in the 60s. And as we mentioned right at the start, in 2002 the film based on the book called Mothman Prophecies. Richard Gere plays a reporter basically who seems to have witnessed the Mothman shortly before. Sorry, whose wife seems to have witnessed the Mothman shortly before her death, and he gets sort of sucked into it and tries to figure out what the Mothman is. Now, I've watched the film, I've read the book, and the book was so much better than the film. The film was not great, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, it's one of those ones that's like we talked about Moment of Contact, and down in South America, in the town, it's all dedicated. They've got UFO statue up, and they've really embraced it. Now, Point Pleasant have fully embraced Mothman, which is crazy. They've got, like you mentioned, they've got a museum. They have like Mothman days and parades and all that kind of stuff, and it's like the weirdest thing. I can't even imagine in the UK, unless I've missed something. I can't imagine us doing something like that.
We
in the
have
UK.
cheese rolling.
Oh, we do have cheese rolling down the
Festival.
hill. That's fairly close to me in Gloucester.
Is it?
That's fucking mental. If you
I've
see
seen,
them,
seen
they
clips.
just people breaking their legs and all sorts, and they win the cheese. That's it. It's like you've done all of that to win some cheese. But yeah, we don't sort of celebrate an urban legend, do we? Really?
No, even like the big cases, like I went when I went to Rendlesham, and had
Yeah.
absolutely nothing.
Hmm.
I went to like the town of Rendlesham, and I went to the shops. I was asking people, it's like, yeah, there's nothing. Like apart from the little trail, it's basically a little signpost that you follow around the forest.
Mm.
That's it. There's nothing at all to say we've got one of the biggest, well-known cases in the world.
Yeah.
And like Roswell, you got like the Roswell Festival, Expo, everything that goes on over there. Rendlesham, probably not quite on the same scale, but still one of the top cases like Roswell, where everyone in the world knows about it. And we have nothing. It's literally nothing.
It's insane. And where we've done the episode on Rendlesham, and like the history that's there. So it's not as even if it was just like those few nights in 1980. It's like going back 900,000 years in that particular area, and there's still, maybe that's just a British thing.
Maybe not to make a fuss over things.
It's like, no, we don't talk about that kind of stuff here. We don't talk about that. But yeah, so it's good to see that they embrace it, and it obviously attracts people to go to the festivals and even seeing the statues. So yeah,
And end up in video games.
Yeah, and ending up in video games. You know you've made it when you become a character in a video game.
That'd be cool. I did find a case, because I was looking at sort of if there's anything more sort of recently. There have been like obviously some sightings in the 2000s and stuff. There's a couple of grainy photographs that you can't really tell.
Yeah.
I did find one from Georgia in the Middle East, I guess. Isn't that the Middle East? Near Russia.
Okay,
East
yeah.
Europe. And their newspaper called, I'm going to butcher the name, it's in Russian, I think. Svavdanya Gruzia newspaper.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Local, you're a regular reader.
Yeah.
And they claim that Mothman sightings in Moscow foreshadowed the 1999 Russian apartment bombings, which killed more than 300 people.
Wow.
So it's that kind of sightings around, and then some tragic event happens.
Yeah. That's weird. That is weird.
There's a book in 1970, before John Keel's book, from Gray Barker called The Silver Bridge. And that mentions, amongst other things, that the Mothman or Birdman who visited like the area around Point Pleasant and stuff.
Yeah.
1966. And he, like you mentioned earlier, sort of like the psychological side of it, where he sort of talks to local residents and how they sort of dealt with it before and after the bridge collapse, and sort of why people felt the way they did and why they sort of put it onto Mothman. I guess when things happen, people do try and look for answers, And
Yes.
if that's sort of what you come to, that's what you think, then it's something that people to grab onto.
Yeah, I suppose it gives some kind of, especially if it's just like a tragic accident and there is no explanation, and there's been this kind of urban legend around before it. I can imagine it's quite, I don't know what the right word is, but it's kind of like, it's easier to say that something's caused it than to not know why it's been caused at all and not have any answers. So you kind of get in some kind of, I say closure, that's not the right word, but to be able to blame something for a tragic accident, yeah, it's definitely, you always, when there's accidents, you're always looking for somebody to blame, or something must have happened to cause this rather than it just be a tragic accident. And what better than Mothman, this mysterious creature that nobody's really got solid evidence of, and it fits the bill quite nicely.
Yeah, and you would shit your pants.
Oh Christ, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Especially if I just see these glowing red eyes, that'd be enough to freak me out anyway. And then just sort of see them going up in the air, I'd be like, "Fucking Jesus Christ!" But
Cool. So, yeah, we hope you enjoyed the first episode of The Monsters of Fallout 76. See you next time.
bye.